She texts the Mafia boss by mistake. Part 2. In the first part of our story, Sophia Ellis, a struggling single mother, accidentally sent a text meant for her unreliable ex-boyfriend Mike to the wrong number. That number belonged to Eliseo Castelli, a powerful Mafia boss whom Mike had stolen from. Eliseo appeared at Sophia's door with his men, explaining that Mike had stolen a flash drive containing sensitive information that could get people killed. For their protection, Eliseo moved Sophia and her sick 4-year-old daughter Emma to his mansion. The next morning, he revealed that Mike had been planning to kidnap Emma, showing Sophia evidence including her daughter's missing passport and a prepared backpack. Sophia helped Eliseo set a trap for Mike, who was captured. Afterward, Eliseo offered Sophia 2 choices: disappear with new identities and financial security, or stay with him. After a night of reflection, Sophia decided to accept his offer to stay, entering his dangerous world with open eyes to provide security and stability for her daughter. Now, the story continues. Morning light streamed through the gauzy curtains as I stood at the window of the East Suite, watching gardeners tend to Eliseo's immaculate grounds. 3 days had passed since I'd made my decision to stay, and the reality of my new life was still sinking in. "Are you certain about this?" Rosa asked, arranging Emma's freshly laundered clothes in the dresser drawers. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in its usual severe bun, but her eyes held unexpected warmth. "No," I admitted, turning to face her. "But I'm certain about keeping Emma safe, and right now, that means staying here." Rosa nodded, her hands never pausing in their efficient work. "Mr. Castelli is a complicated man. Not always gentle, but always fair to those who are loyal." "Is that a warning or a reassurance?" I asked with a wry smile. "Both, perhaps." She closed the drawer with finality. "The movers will deliver your remaining belongings this afternoon. Mr. Castelli thought you might prefer to arrange them yourself." It had surprised me when Eliseo offered to have my apartment packed up. Not just the essentials, but everything. Emma's toys, my worn paperbacks, even the second-hand furniture I'd been so proud to purchase on my own after leaving Mike. When I'd protested that most of it wouldn't fit the mansion's aesthetic, he'd simply shrugged and said, "There are many rooms here. Choose one for your things." This unexpected consideration was typical of the contradictions I was discovering about Eliseo Castelli. The same man who had surrounded my building with armed men now ensured Emma had her favorite cereal each morning. The man whose phone calls could make hardened criminals tremble, read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. "Mommy, look what I made." Emma burst into the room, clutching a colorful drawing. In just 3 days, she'd blossomed in this new environment, her illness forgotten in the excitement of exploring the mansion's many wonders. "It's beautiful, sweetie," I said, examining her artwork. "Is that Mr. Eliseo?" "Uh-huh. And that's Rosa. And that's you. And that's me." She pointed to each figure in turn. "We're a family now." My heart caught at her innocent assumption. "Emma, Mr. Eliseo is being very kind letting us stay in his home, but he said I could call him Leo if I wanted," she interrupted, unconcerned with adult complications. "And he's going to teach me to swim in the big pool when it gets warmer." I exchanged glances with Rosa, who tactfully busied herself with the laundry. The promise of swimming lessons was news to me. "We'll see," I said neutrally. "Why don't you go wash up for lunch? I think Rosa mentioned pasta today." After Emma skipped out of the room, I sighed. "She's getting attached quickly. Children sense more than we give them credit for," Rosa replied. "She knows she is safe here." "And what about her father?" I asked quietly. "What happened to Mike after that night?" Rosa's expression closed. "That is not for me to say. You should speak with Mr. Castelli." I found Eliseo in his study later that afternoon, his attention focused on a stack of documents. He looked up as I entered, setting aside his reading glasses, a humanizing detail I hadn't expected from a man of his position. "Sophia," he said, his voice warming slightly. "Please come in." I closed the door behind me and remained standing. 3 days in his home hadn't diminished the intimidating energy he projected, even in casual clothes. "Emma mentioned swimming lessons," I said without preamble. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "She said she'd never learned. Every child should know how to swim." "You should have discussed it with me first." "You're right." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. I apologize. It won't happen again. His easy acquiescence surprised me. I need to know what happened to Mike. Alazio's expression grew serious. Are you certain you want those details? Yes. I met his gaze steadily. If I'm staying here, making a life here, I can't have this uncertainty hanging over us. Is he dead? No. Alessio stood, moving to pour 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter. Michael is very much alive, though perhaps wishing otherwise at the moment. He handed me a glass, which I accepted automatically. We recovered the flash drive and all copies, he continued. Michael has been persuaded to provide names of everyone he contacted about the information. He's being held at a secure location until we've verified his cooperation. And after that? Alessio's blue eyes held mine. After that, he disappears. New identity, new location, very far from here, with the understanding that returning would have fatal consequences. A chill ran through me despite the room's comfortable temperature. The clinical way he discussed potentially ending a man's life, Emma's father, was a stark reminder of who exactly I'd aligned myself with. He won't come looking for Emma? I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. No. The certainty in Alessio's voice was both reassuring and terrifying. That part of his life is over, permanently. I took a steadying sip of water. How do you do this? Make these decisions so easily? Not easily, he corrected, surprising me again. Necessarily. Every choice has consequences, Sophia, including yours to stay. I know that. Do you? He set down his glass and stepped closer. You've seen only the edges of my world. There are parts of it I hope you never have to witness. Then why offer to let me stay? Why not just give us new identities and send us away? For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, because in 20 years of building this life, I've learned that loyalty and trust are rarer than diamonds. In one day, you showed more of both than people I've known for decades. I betrayed Mike, I pointed out. No. You protected your daughter from a man who would have sacrificed her for his own gain. There's a difference. Before I could respond, a knock at the door interrupted us. Anton entered, his expression grave. Sir, there's a situation that requires your attention. Alessio nodded once. We'll continue this conversation later, he told me, already shifting back into the role of command. I returned to the East Suite, where Emma was gleefully directing the movers placing her beloved bookshelf from our apartment. The juxtaposition was jarring, my daughter's innocent excitement against the sobering conversation I'd just had. That night, after tucking Emma into bed, I wandered the mansion's halls, finding myself drawn to the library. The room was a book lover's dream. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, leather armchairs, soft lighting. I ran my fingers along the spines, surprised to find well-worn classics among the impressive collection. Couldn't sleep. I turned to find Alessio in the doorway, his tie loosened, the day's tension still visible in the set of his shoulders. Just exploring, I said. This room is beautiful. It was my mother's favorite place. He entered, moving to a cabinet that proved to house a small bar. Drink? Just water, please. He poured himself what looked like whiskey and handed me a glass of water. The situation from earlier has been resolved, he said, answering my unasked question. I didn't ask. You were wondering. He settled into one of the armchairs, gesturing for me to take the other. If we're to make this work, Sophia, we need to establish some boundaries. I was thinking the same thing. I sat across from him, gathering my courage. I need a purpose here beyond being your whatever I am. I have a degree in accounting. I worked at a firm before Emma was born. His eyebrows rose slightly. You want to work for me? With you, I corrected. I can't just be an ornament in your mansion, Alessio. I need to contribute, to use my skills. He considered this, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. My legitimate businesses could certainly use someone with your qualifications. The restaurant group, perhaps, or the real estate holdings. Legitimate being the operative word, I said carefully. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I wouldn't expose you to the other aspects. To protect me? To protect us both. He leaned forward slightly. There are lines, once crossed, that change a person. I'd prefer you remain on this side of them. The intensity in his gaze made my heart beat faster. This wasn't just about employment. It was about something deeper, something neither of us was ready to name. "We should discuss compensation," I said, trying to steer back to safer ground. "Of course. I'll have contracts drawn up tomorrow." He finished his drink and stood. "It's late. I should let you get some rest." At the door, he paused. "Sophia? My mother would have liked you." After he left, I remained in the library, processing our conversation. The strangeness of my new reality washed over me. Negotiating employment terms with a Mafia boss, while my daughter slept peacefully upstairs, both of us safer than we'd been in years despite the danger surrounding us. Tomorrow would bring movers with the rest of our belongings, employment contracts, and another day of navigating this delicate new existence. But for the first time since that fateful night when I'd sent a text to the wrong number, I felt something close to hope. As I made my way back to the East Suite, I passed one of Alessio's security men standing guard in the hallway. He nodded respectfully, his presence a reminder of the dual nature of my new home, part sanctuary, part fortress. I wondered how long it would take before I stopped noticing them, before armed guards became as normal to me as the luxurious furnishings or Rosa's efficient management of the household. In my bedroom, I found a small package on my pillow, wrapped in simple silver paper. Inside was a smartphone, sleek and obviously expensive, with a note in Alessio's elegant handwriting. "Secure line, my number is programmed. Call anytime." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched me, even as I recognized it for what it also was. Another form of protection. Another way to keep track of me. I set the phone on my nightstand and changed for bed, my mind still processing the day's revelations. Mike was alive, but would soon disappear from our lives completely. I would be working with Alessio, maintaining my financial independence while benefiting from his resources. Emma was thriving, already considering this place home, already viewing Alessio as family. Was I making another terrible mistake, binding our lives to this dangerous, complicated man? Or was this the first right decision I'd made since getting involved with Mike years ago? The luxury sheets felt alien against my skin as I slid into bed, my body exhausted, but my mind still racing. Through the connecting door, I could hear Emma's soft breathing, peaceful and untroubled. Whatever doubts plagued me, she felt secure here, for now. That would have to be enough. 2 weeks into our new life, routine began to take shape. Each morning, I dropped Emma at the exclusive preschool Alessio had arranged, then drove to the downtown offices of Castelli Ventures in the sleek Mercedes he'd insisted I accept, for security reasons. The office staff had welcomed me with a mixture of curiosity and deference, the woman who had somehow caught the elusive Mr. Castelli's attention. My role managing the finances for his restaurant group was legitimate and challenging work that I genuinely enjoyed. If some of the numbers occasionally raised questions, I filed them away in the mental compartment labeled "Don't Ask." Compartmentalizing had become a survival skill. "Ms. Ellis, Mr. Russo is here to see you," my assistant, Diane, announced through the intercom. Vincent Russo was Alessio's right-hand man, the driver who had first brought us to the mansion and now seemed to have the additional duty of keeping an eye on me. "Send him in," I replied, closing the spreadsheet I'd been reviewing. Vincent entered with his usual efficiency, closing the door behind him. In his early 40s, with salt and pepper hair and watchful eyes, he maintained a professional demeanor that revealed nothing of his thoughts. "Mr. Castelli asked me to remind you about tonight's dinner," he said. "The Bianchis will be arriving at 7. I suppressed a sigh. The Bianchis, Lorenzo and his wife Gabriella, were important business associates whose exact relationship to Alessio remained deliberately vague. This would be my first formal introduction as whatever I was in Alessio's life. "Thank you, Vincent. I haven't forgotten." He nodded, but remained standing. "There's something else. We've detected unusual activity around Emma's school." My blood ran cold. "What kind of activity?" "A car that's passed by too many times. Could be nothing, but Mr. Castelli doesn't take chances. Security has been doubled, and I'll be personally escorting you for pickup today." "Do you think it's related to Mike?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Vincent's expression gave nothing away. "It's being investigated. Mr. Castelli wanted you informed, not alarmed." After he left, I stared unseeing at my computer screen. The protective bubble of the past 2 weeks shimmered with its first crack. I'd been naive to think we could simply slide into this new life without complications. The school pickup was uneventful, despite Vincent's heightened vigilance. Emma chattered happily about her day as we drove back to the mansion, unaware of the extra guards or the way Vincent's eyes constantly scanned our surroundings. At home, Rosa helped me prepare for dinner, while Emma played in the adjacent sitting room, where we could keep an eye on her. The blue dress, Rosa decided, examining the options I'd laid out. It complements your eyes. Is this really necessary? I asked, allowing her to zip me into the elegant cocktail dress Alessio had added to my wardrobe. I'm just his accountant. Rosa's knowing look spoke volumes. The Bianchis are traditional people. They expect certain appearances to be maintained. What exactly do they think I am to him? What are you to him? She countered gently. I had no answer. Alessio and I had developed a careful dance over the past 2 weeks. Professional at the office, cordial at home, with moments of something deeper that neither of us acknowledged. He hadn't pressed for more, seemingly content with the arrangement. Yet I sometimes caught him watching me with an intensity that made my skin warm. Just remember, Rosa added, securing a simple silver necklace around my throat. With these people, perception is reality. Follow Mr. Castelli's lead and you'll be fine. Alessio was waiting at the foot of the grand staircase when I descended, Emma's hand in mine. He looked devastating in a tailored black suit, his blue eyes warming as they took in my appearance. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you. I felt suddenly shy, like a teenager on a first date. Emma wanted to say goodnight before Rosa takes her up. He crouched to Emma's level, his expression softening as it always did with her. Good night, Piccola. Sleep well. Emma threw her arms around his neck in an impulsive hug. Night, Leo. Don't forget we're going to the zoo tomorrow. I raised an eyebrow as Rosa led Emma upstairs. The zoo? Sunday excursion, he explained, offering me his arm. I hope you don't mind. The children's area has a new penguin exhibit she's been talking about. The casual way he'd inserted himself into our weekend plans should have bothered me. Instead, I found myself touched by his thoughtfulness. I don't mind, I said, accepting his arm, but we really should discuss these things first. Noted. His hand covered mine briefly. The Bianchis will be here shortly. They're important allies, Sophia. Lorenzo has known me since I was a boy. What should I know about them? Lorenzo is old school, respects tradition, family values. His wife Gabriella is sharper than she lets on. They'll be curious about you. And what should I tell them? His eyes held mine. The truth. That you're under my protection and managing my legitimate business interests. And the rest? I asked, the unspoken question hanging between us. Before he could answer, the doorbell rang, announcing our guest's arrival. Dinner was an elaborate affair served in the formal dining room, with Rosa overseeing the staff with military precision. Lorenzo Bianchi was a barrel-chested man in his 60s with shrewd eyes that missed nothing, while Gabriella was an elegant woman whose carefully maintained appearance belied her age. Their scrutiny was immediate and unmistakable. So, Sophia, Lorenzo said as the first course was served. Alessio tells us you're quite the financial wizard. Hardly a wizard, I replied, following Alessio's lead in using my wine glass sparingly. Just good with numbers, too modest. Alessio interjected. Sophia has already identified several inefficiencies in the restaurant group that will increase profits by nearly 15%. Impressive, Gabriella commented, her gaze sliding between us. And how did you two meet? Alessio has been uncharacteristically vague. I felt Alessio tense beside me. We hadn't prepared a cover story, and I suddenly realized why. He wanted to see how I would handle the question. Actually, it was a wrong number, I said, deciding that a version of the truth was safest. I texted him by mistake. Most people would have ignored it, but Alessio responded. One conversation led to another. Lorenzo's eyebrows rose. Fate has strange ways. Indeed, Alessio agreed, his hand finding mine under the table and squeezing gently in approval. The conversation shifted to business matters, with occasional personal questions directed my way. I navigated them carefully, aware that every answer was being evaluated. By dessert, I sensed the Bianchi's initial suspicion had softened to cautious acceptance. "Your daughter?" Gabriella said casually as we moved to the sitting room for after-dinner drinks. "She's 4, correct? Does she see her father often?" I felt Eliseo stiffen beside me, though his expression remained pleasant. This was dangerous territory, touching on Mike and the complicated circumstances that had brought us here. "Her father isn't in the picture," I replied evenly. "It's been just Emma and me for some time now." "Children need a strong male influence," Lorenzo commented, accepting a cognac from Eliseo, "especially girls. They learn how men should treat them from their fathers." "I couldn't agree more," Eliseo said, his voice carrying a subtle edge. "Which is why some men shouldn't be fathers at all." A weighted silence followed, broken when Gabriella smoothly changed the subject to an upcoming charity gala. I caught the significant look she gave her husband, a warning to tread carefully. Clearly, they understood more about our situation than I'd realized. After our guests departed, Eliseo poured us each a small glass of amaretto in the study. "You handled that perfectly," he said, loosening his tie. Lorenzo was impressed. "And Gabriella?" "She's harder to read, but the fact that she invited you to lunch next week is a good sign." He settled beside me on the leather sofa. "I should have warned you about the questions." "You wanted to see how I'd respond," I observed, not accusingly. He didn't deny it. "This world requires quick thinking, Sophia. You proved tonight that you have it." "Vincent mentioned a car near Emma's school," I said, changing the subject. "Should I be worried?" Eliseo's expression darkened. "Precautions have been taken. The situation is being handled." "That's not an answer," he sighed, setting down his glass. "We believe it may be connected to the Petrov organization. They're unhappy about losing the information Michael was offering them." "The Russians you mentioned before," I said, remembering his warning from that first night. "Are they after Emma?" "No. More likely they're trying to determine your connection to me, to find leverage." His jaw tightened. "They won't succeed." I absorbed this, the reality of our situation striking me anew. This is never going to be normal, is it? There will always be threats, precautions, people watching us. "I won't lie to you, Sophia." He turned to face me fully. "My world comes with risks. But there are rewards too. Security. Power. Freedom of a kind most people never experience. At what cost?" I whispered. "That depends on what you value." His hand found mine again, his touch sending electricity up my arm. "What do you value, Sophia?" "Emma's safety, financial security, independence." I met his gaze. "The truth, even when it's difficult." "And what about connection?" he asked, his voice lowering. "Companionship? Desire?" My breath caught as his fingers traced a path up my arm. We'd been circling this moment for 2 weeks. The attraction building with every conversation, every shared meal, every time our eyes met across a room. "Those two," I admitted. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "I want to kiss you, Sophia. I've wanted to since that first night in your apartment, when you stood your ground despite your fear." "That doesn't seem like the most romantic first impression," I managed, heart racing. "Courage is intoxicating." His face was inches from mine now. "May I?" Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his. The kiss began gentle, almost tentative, then deepened as his arms encircled me, drawing me closer. I felt myself melting into him, all the tension and uncertainty of the past weeks channeling into this connection. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, I saw something rare in his expression: vulnerability. "I should check on Emma," I said softly, needing space to process what had just happened. He nodded, releasing me reluctantly. "Of course." At the door I paused. I don't regret it. The kiss. But this, us, it complicates things. Life is complicated, Sophia. His smile held a touch of sadness. The question is whether the complication is worth it. I carried that question with me as I checked on Emma, sleeping peacefully with Mr. Flopsy clutched to her chest. The contrast was stark, my innocent daughter, and the dangerous world I'd brought her into. Yet seeing her security, her happiness, I couldn't regret my decision. Back in my room, I changed out of the blue dress, hanging it carefully before slipping into comfortable pajamas. My fingers touched my lips, still feeling the pressure of Alisio's kiss. The unexpected tenderness from a man who commanded such power. Whatever was developing between us would bring its own complications, its own dangers. But as I slid beneath the luxurious sheets, I realized Alisio was right. Some complications were worth it. The next morning, I woke to find Emma already up, sitting cross-legged on the foot of my bed with a book. She looked up with a grin, her dark curls wild from sleep. "Today's zoo day," she announced, bouncing slightly. "Leo said we're going to see penguins and tigers and monkeys and lions and—" "Slow down, sweetie," I laughed, pulling her into a hug. "The zoo's not going anywhere. Let's have breakfast first." Downstairs, I was surprised to find Alisio already at the breakfast table, reading the newspaper and sipping coffee. Sunday mornings were usually reserved for his business calls, another indication of how our presence was changing his routines. "Good morning," he said, setting aside his paper. His eyes met mine briefly, a silent question about where we stood after last night's kiss. "Morning, Leo." Emma climbed into the chair beside him, immediately launching into questions about zoo animals. I took my seat, accepting the coffee Rosa poured. "You didn't have to change your schedule for us," I said quietly. While Emma chattered about giraffes, I wanted to. His simple answer spoke volumes. This wasn't obligation or strategy. He genuinely wanted to spend time with us. The realization warmed me more than the coffee. Perhaps this complicated dance we were engaged in wasn't just about protection or mutual benefit. Perhaps it was becoming something more, something I hadn't allowed myself to consider since the disaster of my relationship with Mike. As I watched Alisio patiently answering Emma's endless questions, his formidable presence softened by her innocent enthusiasm, I found myself wondering if fate had indeed played a hand in that mistaken text message. If perhaps, in the most unlikely of circumstances, we had found exactly what we both needed. The Sunday zoo trip revealed yet another side of Alisio Castelli. In jeans and a casual button-down, without his usual entourage, though I spotted Vincent and 2 other security men maintaining a discreet distance, he seemed almost ordinary, if you ignored the way other visitors instinctively moved aside for him. Emma was delighted by the penguins, pressing her face against the glass as they dove and swam. Alessio crouched beside her, pointing out different species and sharing facts that surprised me with their detail. "How do you know so much about penguins?" I asked, as we watched Emma feed a giraffe under a keeper's supervision. "I read," he said with a slight smile, "and I have excellent retention for things that might interest a 4-year-old. The deliberate way he'd educated himself for Emma's benefit touched me deeply. Mike had never shown such consideration, even before our separation. "She adores you," I said quietly. His expression turned serious. "The feeling is mutual. She's an extraordinary child, Sophia." "Leo," Emma called, running back to us. "The lady says we can see the tiger cubs next." She slipped her small hand into his naturally, leading him toward the next exhibit. I followed, struck by the tableau they created, Emma's dark curls bouncing as she skipped alongside Alisio's tall frame, his usual vigilance softened by genuine enjoyment. For one golden afternoon, we could have been any family enjoying the zoo. The knowledge that armed guards watched from a distance, that the car awaiting us had bulletproof glass, seemed almost irrelevant in the face of Emma's laughter and Alisio's rare, unguarded smiles. The fantasy shattered the next morning. I was reviewing invoices in my office when Diane buzzed to announce Vincent's arrival. One look at his face told me something was wrong. "What is it?" I asked, already reaching for my purse. "There's been an incident at the mansion," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Everyone is fine, but Mr. Castelli requests your immediate return." My heart pounded as Vincent drove with grim efficiency, taking an indirect route I recognized as a security precaution. "Tell me what happened," I demanded. "If everyone's fine, why the urgency?" Vincent's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "There was an attempt to breach the property. The security system functioned as designed. 2 intruders were intercepted. The careful phrasing told me everything. Dead? 1 dead, 1 in custody. Mr. Castelli is questioning him now. I closed my eyes, processing this. And Emma? With Rosa in the East Wing, she's unaware of the situation. The mansion's gates never looked more welcome as they swung open to admit us. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, more visible than I'd ever seen them. Vincent escorted me directly to Alessio's study, where raised voices could be heard through the heavy door. Anton stood guard outside, his expression even more forbidding than usual. He knocked once, announcing my arrival before admitting me. The study had transformed into a war room. Alessio stood behind his desk, phone to his ear, while 3 men I recognized as his lieutenants huddled over laptops and documents. He ended his call when he saw me, crossing the room in swift strides. "You're safe," he said, hands grasping my shoulders as his eyes scanned my face. "I'm fine," I assured him. Vincent didn't give me details. Alessio gestured for the others to leave, waiting until the door closed behind them before speaking. "Petrov's men," he said, voice tight with controlled rage. "They attempted to scale the east wall at 4 this morning. Security captured one alive." "The one you were questioning," I said, understanding the raised voices now. "Yes." His expression hardened. They were targeting Emma's room. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "Emma? Why?" "Leverage." He guided me to a chair as my knees weakened. "They believed taking her would force me to turn over Michael and the information he stole. But you already have the flash drive," I said, confused. "They don't know that. Or they don't believe it." He crouched before me, his eyes level with mine. "Sophia, listen to me. They never got close. The security system worked exactly as designed. Emma is safe and unaware. This time," I whispered, the full implications hitting me, "what about next time? Or the time after that? Will we spend the rest of our lives waiting for the next attempt?" Alessio's jaw tightened. "There won't be a next time, not after today." Something in his tone sent a chill through me. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm ending this." He stood, pacing the room with contained energy. "Petrov has overstepped. Targeting a child breaks every code. By tonight, he'll understand the consequences." I recognized the shift in him. The man who had read to Emma about penguins was gone, replaced by someone capable of ordering deaths without hesitation. "I want to see my daughter," I said, rising unsteadily. "Of course." His expression softened marginally. "Vincent will take you to her. Stay in the East Wing until I come for you." "Alessio." I caught his arm as he turned away. "Don't become someone Emma would fear." Something flashed in his eyes. Pain, conflict, resolution. "Some actions are necessary to prevent greater harm, Sophia, even if they cost pieces of my soul." He cupped my face, pressing a brief, fierce kiss to my lips. "Go to Emma. Let me handle this." I found Emma playing contentedly with Rosa, her world still intact, still safe. I hugged her tightly, breathing in her sweet scent of baby shampoo and innocence. "Mommy, you're squishing me," she protested, wiggling free. "Look what Rosa helped me make." I admired her craft project with forced enthusiasm, my mind spinning with the morning's revelations. All the luxury, all the security measures, hadn't prevented men with guns from attempting to reach my daughter's bedroom. The very danger I'd sought to escape by staying with Alessio had found us anyway, perhaps because we were with him. Hours passed with no word from Alessio. Rosa brought lunch, then dinner, her expression giving nothing away when I asked for updates. Night fell, and still the mansion remained in lockdown, guards visible through every window. I tucked Emma into bed with extra stories, then paced the sitting room, jumping at every sound. When the door finally opened shortly before midnight, I was startled to see not Alessio but Vincent. "Mr. Castelli asked me to inform you that the situation has been resolved," he said formally. "The mansion is secure. He apologizes but will not be returning tonight." "Where is he?" I demanded. Vincent hesitated, handling the aftermath. "He asked that you not wait up." After he left, I sank onto the sofa, the day's tension finally overwhelming me. Tears came suddenly, silent sobs that I muffled against a cushion to avoid waking Emma. I cried for the normalcy we'd never have, for the danger that seemed to follow us despite every precaution, for whatever aftermath Alicio was handling that would add more shadows to his eyes. Morning came without Alicio's return. I dropped Emma at school with double the usual security detail, then went to my office as if it were any ordinary Tuesday, compartmentalizing as I'd learned to do. It was after 9 that evening when I heard his car in the driveway. Emma was already asleep, exhausted from a day where she'd been kept inside because of rain, according to Rosa. Though the sky had been clear, I met Alessio in the foyer, taking in his appearance with a single glance, the impeccable suit that couldn't quite hide his exhaustion, the barely perceptible stiffness in his movements suggesting injury. "It's done," he said simply. "What does that mean?" I asked, following him to the kitchen where he poured himself a glass of water, drinking it in one long swallow. "It means Petrov and his organization are no longer a concern." He set the glass down carefully. "For anyone." The implications were clear, all of them. The leadership, those directly responsible. His voice was flat, emotionless. "The message has been sent and received. No one will target Emma again." The implications were clear. I should have been horrified by the casual way he referenced what must have been significant bloodshed. Instead, I felt a complicated mixture of relief and guilt. Relief that Emma was safer. Guilt that I couldn't bring myself to condemn his methods. "You're hurt," I said, noticing the way he favored his left side. "It's nothing. Let me see." After a moment's hesitation, he unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a bandaged torso. "Broken rib. Doctor's already been." I touched the edge of the bandage gently. "You could have been killed. A necessary risk. Not to Emma." My voice caught. "Not to me." His expression softened as he caught my hand. "Sophia, don't." I pulled away. "Don't tell me it was necessary or unavoidable. You went personally to make a statement, to show strength. That was a choice." "Yes," he admitted, "it was." "And if you'd been killed, what happens to us then? Do we become targets for whoever takes your place? For revenge from what remains of Petrov's organization?" "No." His voice hardened. "Contingencies are in place. You and Emma would be taken immediately to a safe location. New identities, financial security, everything we discussed before. Vincent has the instructions." The fact that he'd planned so thoroughly for his own death should have been reassuring. Instead, it underscored the precariousness of our situation. "I can't do this," I whispered. "I thought I could. But after yesterday, Emma deserves better than living in a fortress, constantly guarded, never knowing normal." "And you?" he asked, eyes searching mine. "What do you deserve, Sophia?" "Peace," I said simply. "Security that doesn't come with body counts." He was silent for a long moment. "If you want to leave, I won't stop you. The offer of new identities still stands." "Just like that?" I asked, surprised by his acquiescence. "Not just like that." Pain flashed across his features, not entirely physical. "It would cost me. But I meant what I said about wanting to protect you both. If protection means letting you go, then so be it." The raw honesty in his voice shook me. This powerful, dangerous man who had eliminated an entire criminal organization in a day would release us if I asked. The realization of how much power I held, how much he cared, was staggering. "I don't know what I want anymore," I admitted. "When I'm with you, when I see how you are with Emma, how you make me feel, I want to stay. But days like yesterday remind me what your world really is." "My world is both," he said quietly. "The violence and the tenderness. I can't separate them, Sophia. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not." "I wouldn't want you to." I reached up to touch his face, feeling the stubble of a day without shaving. "But I need time to think, to decide if this life is something I can accept. Not just for Emma's sake, but for my own." He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. "Take all the time you need. We're safe now. Truly safe." Petrov was the last piece of Michael's mess. That night, I lay awake long after Alicio had retreated to his own room, weighing impossible choices. The memory of the zoo visit, that glimpse of normal family happiness, warred with the reality of armed intruders scaling walls to reach my daughter. the tenderness in Alazio's kiss against the knowledge of what he was capable of doing to protect what he considered his. And somewhere in that tangled web of conflicting emotions was the undeniable truth that, despite everything, I was falling in love with him. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, it brought a strange calm, as if naming the feeling gave me power over it. I could love Alessio Castelli and still choose to leave him, if that was what Emma's safety required. Love didn't have to mean blindness or surrender. Morning found me exhausted but resolved. I would give myself 1 month, 30 days to truly experience this life, to see if integration was possible between Alessio's world and the future I wanted for Emma. If, at the end of that time, I still had doubts, we would accept his offer of new identities and disappear. I shared my decision with Alessio over breakfast, after Emma had scampered off with Rosa to get ready for school. "A month," he repeated, considering. "And your criteria for staying? Safety, of course," I began. "But also normalcy for Emma, friends, activities, childhood experiences without constant fear, and—" I hesitated, then pushed forward. "Progress on transitioning your more problematic business interests to legitimate ones." His eyebrows rose. "That's a complex proposition, Sophia." "I'm not asking for miracles," I clarified. "Just demonstrated intent, a plan. Evidence that someday this life won't require armed guards and bulletproof glass." He was silent for a long moment, eyes fixed on his coffee cup. Then he looked up. Decision made. Agreed. 1 month to prove this can work. For all of us. "And if I choose to leave after that? Then I'll ensure you and Emma disappear so thoroughly that no one, including me, will ever find you." His voice was steady, but I caught the flash of pain in his eyes. "Unless you wish to be found." The month that followed was a revelation in many ways. True to his word, Alessio worked to create spaces of normalcy for Emma, playdates with carefully vetted children from her preschool, a birthday party for one of her classmates, with security discreetly present but out of sight, weekly swimming lessons in the mansion's pool. For me, he opened doors to his legitimate business empire that I hadn't known existed, introducing me to his legal team, his financial advisors, even his philanthropic foundation that funded educational programs in underprivileged neighborhoods. "This has always been part of the operation," he explained as we toured one of the foundation's community centers. "My mother insisted on it. Take with one hand, give with the other," she used to say. "To ease your conscience?" I asked, not unkindly. "Perhaps," he admitted, "but also because stability requires community support. Fear creates enemies, opportunity creates allies." It was a pragmatic view of charity, but I couldn't deny the center's positive impact. Modern computer labs, after-school programs, job training for adults. Whatever his motivations, Alessio was improving lives. Most surprising was his willingness to discuss the transition plan I'd requested. 2 weeks into our trial period, he invited me to a private dinner on the mansion's terrace. Emma already tucked into bed after a day of swimming that had exhausted her. Candlelight flickered across the table as Anton served a meal that rivaled any 5-star restaurant. After the plates were cleared and we were alone, Alessio produced a leather portfolio. "A preliminary strategy," he said, sliding it across to me. "For transitioning the organization to fully legitimate operations over 5 years. I opened it cautiously, half expecting vague promises. Instead, I found detailed financial projections, legal frameworks, timelines, contingency plans, all created by top consultants in corporate restructuring and international business law. "You've put serious thought into this," I said, looking up from the documents. "I've been considering it for longer than you might think." He leaned back, swirling the wine in his glass. "The old ways are becoming untenable. Technology, global banking regulations, surveillance, they all favor legitimate business models. Adaptation isn't just about meeting your conditions, Sophia. It's sound strategy. And your people? Those who've been with you in the traditional aspects will be given opportunities in the legitimate operations if they choose to transition. Generous retirement packages if they don't." His expression remained calm, pragmatic. "The younger ones will adapt. Some of the old guard will resist, But they're outnumbered. It won't be easy, I cautioned, turning pages filled with complex legal structures. Few worthwhile things are. His eyes held mine across the candlelight. But I've found recently that some complications are worth the effort. The reference to our earlier conversation brought a flush to my cheeks. Our relationship had deepened over the past weeks, the initial attraction evolving into something more substantial. We'd shared meals, conversations, quiet evenings in the library. He'd taught me to play chess. I'd introduced him to my favorite novels. The kisses we'd exchanged had grown more frequent, more intense, though we'd maintained an unspoken boundary against taking things further, while my decision hung in the balance. "You're doing all this for us," I said softly. "For me." "With you," he corrected. "Not just for you. This transition gives the organization a sustainable future. Your presence simply accelerated plans that were already forming." "And if I choose to leave, will you continue with it?" He set down his glass, his expression serious. "Yes, though at a slower pace, perhaps, without the same motivation." The admission touched me deeply. This wasn't manipulation or a temporary measure to keep us there. It was genuine change, catalyzed, but not entirely dependent on my presence. As our trial month neared its end, I found myself increasingly torn. Alicio had met or exceeded every condition I'd set. Emma was thriving, her life filled with as much normalcy as possible given the circumstances. The transition plan was sound, already being implemented in small ways that demonstrated commitment. And then there was my growing attachment to Alicio himself, not just physical attraction, but genuine respect and affection. The complexity of his character continued to fascinate me. The ruthless strategist who could also spend hours helping Emma build elaborate block castles. The man whose reputation made hardened criminals tremble, but who read poetry in the library late at night. The night before my self-imposed deadline, I found myself unable to sleep. I slipped from my room, drawn once again to the library that had become a sanctuary of sorts. To my surprise, Alessio was already there, gazing out the window at the moonlit gardens. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked without turning. "Too much on my mind." I moved to stand beside him, following his gaze to the fountain where koi fish glimmered like copper beneath the water's surface. "Your decision." "Yes." He turned to face me, expression guarded. "Have you made it?" "I think I have," I said slowly. "But first, I need to understand something. That night, with Petrov's men, you were injured. A broken rib. It's healing well." "That's not what I'm asking." I met his gaze directly. "You went personally. Put yourself at risk. Why?" He was silent for a long moment, weighing his words. There are messages that can only be delivered in person. Statements that require direct action. So it was business. Strategy. Partly. His honesty was unflinching, but also because they targeted Emma, and that made it personal. The distinction was important. This hadn't been just about territory or power or sending messages to rivals. It had been about Emma, about us. If I asked you right now to walk away from everything, all of it, the legitimate businesses, the other operations, everything, and start over somewhere else with just Emma and me, would you do it? I asked, the question that had been haunting me for days finally spoken aloud. Surprise flickered across his features before his mask of control returned. "You're asking if I would abandon everything I've built, my family's legacy, my responsibilities to my people?" "Yes." I held his gaze. "For us. Would you?" He turned back to the window, silent for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but certain. "Yes. If that was truly what you wanted, what you needed, yes, I would. Even knowing I might never ask it of you?" "Even then," he faced me again, vulnerability evident in his eyes. "What does that tell you, Sophia?" "That I've made the right decision." I stepped closer, heart pounding. "We're staying, Alessio. Emma and I. We're choosing this life, choosing you, with open eyes." Relief and joy transformed his features, the careful control slipping for a moment to reveal the depth of his feelings. He reached for me, hands gentle as they framed my face. "You understand what you're accepting?" The complications, the risks, I silenced him with a kiss, pouring into it all the certainty I felt in that moment. I understand exactly what I'm accepting, I murmured against his lips. And who? That night changed everything between us. The careful distance we'd maintained dissolved as our relationship transformed into something deeper, more intimate. Alessio became not just Emma's protector or my employer, but my partner in every sense. 3 months later, we faced our first real test when one of Alessio's longtime lieutenants objected to the accelerating transition plan. The confrontation took place in Alessio's study, voices raised enough that I could hear them from the hallway where I'd frozen, arms full of financial reports I'd been bringing for his review. "This isn't what your father built," the man, Carlo, I'd met him briefly at a business function, shouted. "You're dismantling everything for what? To play house with some woman and her kid?" Alessio's voice was quieter, but carried a deadly edge I'd rarely heard since that night with Petrov. "Be very careful with your next words, Carlo. 30 years of loyalty buys you this one warning. There won't be a second. The others won't stand for it," Carlo continued, though his tone had subdued. "They're already talking, saying you've gone soft, that your judgment is compromised. Then they can leave, with fair compensation for their service, or they can adapt to the new direction." Alessio's voice was ice. "Those are the only options. And if they choose neither?" A long silence followed, so complete I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. "Then they become obstacles," Alessio said finally. "And you know how I deal with obstacles." The door opened suddenly, revealing Carlo's flushed face. He stopped short at the sight of me, eyes narrowing before he pushed past without a word. I watched him storm down the hallway, hands clenched into fists at his sides. Alessio appeared in the doorway, expression darkening when he saw me. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." I entered the study, setting down the reports. "Is this going to be a problem?" He closed the door, running a hand through his hair in a rare gesture of frustration. "Probably. Carlo has influence with the old guard. This transition was never going to be without resistance. Are we in danger?" "No." His certainty was immediate. "Carlo knows better than to move against me directly. This is political maneuvering, testing boundaries. And if it becomes more than that," his eyes met mine, unflinching, "then I handle it. But it won't come to that. Carlo is smart enough to recognize the inevitable, once he calms down." I studied him, seeing the tension in his shoulders, the slight tightening around his eyes that signaled stress. "This is because of us, because of me." "No." He crossed to me, taking my hands. "This is because of changing times, shifting markets, evolving strategies. You and Emma might have accelerated the timeline, but this confrontation was always coming. Whether he believed that or was saying it to ease my conscience, I couldn't tell. But I understood in that moment that our decision to stay carried consequences not just for us, but for everyone in Alessio's orbit. The ripples of change we'd initiated would continue spreading outward, creating allies and enemies in their wake. "No second thoughts?" Alessio asked, reading my expression. I squeezed his hands. "No. We knew this wouldn't be easy, but we're building something worth the struggle." His smile, rare and genuine, warmed me from within. "Yes, we are." A week passed in careful normalcy. Alessio kept his distance from Carlo and the old guard, focusing instead on the legitimate businesses and our growing family life. He took Emma riding on the estate's grounds, teaching her on a gentle pony while I watched from the terrace, heart in my throat at both the physical activity and the joy on my daughter's face. "He's good with her," Rosa observed, bringing me tea. "It reminds me of how he was with his niece before she moved to Italy with his sister." "I didn't know he had a sister," I said, surprised by this glimpse into his personal history. Rosa's expression softened with old memories. "Maria. 4 years younger. She married an Italian businessman and returned to the old country after their father died. They speak weekly." This fragment of Alessio's life, this evidence of familial bonds and normal attachments, complicated my already tangled feelings. "Does she know? About his business?" I asked quietly. "She knows enough." Rosa's gaze was steady. "Family is family, regardless." That evening, Emma in bed after an exhausting day of riding and swimming, I found Alicio in his study reviewing security footage on multiple monitors. "Checking for threats?" I asked, setting a cup of coffee beside him. "Always." He accepted the coffee with a grateful nod. "Though this is more routine than reactive." Daily review. I glanced at the screens showing various angles of the property, the gates, the perimeter walls, the approaches to the house. A constant reminder of the world we lived in. "Tell me about your sister," I said, perching on the edge of his desk. Surprise flickered across his face. "Maria? What about her?" "Everything. Rosa mentioned her today. Said you talk weekly." He leaned back, a slight smile softening his features. "She's the sensible one. Got out of the family business, married a legitimate businessman, raises my niece and nephew in a beautiful villa outside Naples. You miss her?" "Every day." He nodded, the admission coming easily. "She wanted me to come with her, after our father died. Start fresh in Italy, away from all this. Why didn't you?" His expression turned serious. "Responsibility. Our father left behind an organization of over 200 people who depended on us. Obligations to partners, allies, and," he hesitated. "Pride, perhaps. Believing I could build something better than he had. And have you?" "In some ways." He gestured to one of the monitors showing Emma's darkened bedroom, where security systems ensured her safety. "In others, I'm still trying." I covered his hand with mine. "You will. We will." His fingers intertwined with mine, the simple contact grounding us both. "Maria would like you," he said suddenly. "She's been after me for years to find someone sensible, as she puts it." "Am I sensible? Staying here, raising my daughter in this world?" "You're brave," he corrected, "and pragmatic. You see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. That's rare, Sophia." The compliment warmed me, though I wasn't sure it was entirely deserved. I'd made choices based on limited options, trying to navigate impossible circumstances, but perhaps that was its own kind of wisdom. "Would you like to meet her?" Alessio asked. "Maria and her family? They come to visit twice a year. Their next trip is scheduled for Christmas, about 3 months from now." The invitation carried weight beyond its simple words. This was Alessio offering to integrate me fully into his family, to make our relationship official in the eyes of those who mattered most to him. "I'd like that," I said, meaning it. "Emma would love having cousins to play with." "They're a bit older. Sophia is 12 and Antonio is 15. But they're good with younger children." His smile turned rueful. "And they'll be thrilled to have someone new to spoil. Maria doesn't let me send them nearly as many gifts as I'd like." The glimpse into this normal family dynamic, siblings disagreeing about spoiling children, nieces and nephews, Christmas visits, felt surreal against the backdrop of security monitors and the memory of Carlo's angry departure. "We should visit them sometime," I suggested impulsively. "In Italy. Show Emma where your family comes from." Alicio's expression brightened. "You'd want that? To travel there with me?" "Why not? Once things are more stable here, of course." I squeezed his hand. Emma should know her heritage, all of it. The words slipped out before I fully processed their implication, that I was beginning to think of Alicio as Emma's father, of his family as hers. From his momentary stillness, I knew he'd caught it too. "Sophia," he began carefully, "what exactly are you saying?" I took a deep breath, suddenly certain. "I'm saying that we're building something real here, something permanent. Not just an arrangement or a compromise, but a family." He stood, pulling me gently into his arms. "I've wanted to hear you say that since the night you decided to stay." "I know." I rested my head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I needed time to be sure, to know I wasn't making another mistake. "And now?" I looked up, meeting his gaze. "Now I know this is where we belong, with you, despite everything, or maybe because of it. The complications, the danger, the constant vigilance, they're worth it for what we've found." His kiss was tender, full of promise. When we broke apart, there was determination in his eyes. "Then it's time I accelerate certain plans," he said. "Starting with Carlo and the resistance to our transition. What are you going to do?" "Call a meeting. Make it clear that this is happening. with or without them. Offer generous incentives for cooperation, clear consequences for obstruction. His voice was calm, matter-of-fact. And then introduce you, officially, as my partner in all things. Is that wise? Linking me publicly to these decisions? They already believe you're the catalyst, he said pragmatically. Better to own it, to show that this isn't a temporary infatuation but a permanent alliance. It sends a message about my commitment. I considered this, recognizing the strategic thinking behind what could have been a purely emotional gesture. When? Tomorrow night, here at the mansion. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. Are you ready for that? To stand beside me formally? The question carried weight. This would mark a point of no return, cementing my place in Elisio's world. Yes, I said, surprising myself with how easily the answer came. It's time everyone understood where we stand. The meeting was set for 8 the following evening. I spent the day in nervous anticipation, working remotely from the mansion rather than going to the office. Emma, sensing the unusual tension, was unusually clingy, requiring extra stories and reassurance at bedtime. Why are all those men coming tonight? She asked as I tucked her in. Mr. Flopsy clutched to her chest. They work with Elisio, I explained carefully. They're having a business meeting. Is it about the bad men? The ones who tried to climb our wall? My blood ran cold. What do you know about that, Emma? I heard Rosa talking to Anton. Her small face was serious. They didn't know I was listening. They said bad men tried to get in, but our guard stopped them. I cursed inwardly. We'd been so careful to shield her from that knowledge, but children absorbed more than adults realized. Something like that happened, I admitted, seeing no point in denying what she'd already heard. But Elisio made sure we were safe. That's why we have guards and special locks, like a castle with knights, she suggested, her imagination transforming our reality into something from her storybooks. Something like that. I kissed her forehead. The important thing is that you're safe. And tonight's meeting is just boring grown-up talk, nothing for you to worry about. After she finally drifted off, I changed into the outfit Rosa had laid out, a tailored black dress that projected both elegance and authority, paired with simple diamond studs Elisio had given me on my birthday the previous month. You look perfect, Elisio said when I joined him in his study. He was immaculate in a charcoal suit, his usual imposing presence heightened by the formal attire. Ready? As I'll ever be. The meeting was held in the mansion's formal dining room, transformed for the occasion into a boardroom of sorts. 14 men were seated around the long table when we entered, conversations ceasing immediately as all eyes turned to us. I recognized most of them from various business functions, senior members of Elisio's organization, both legitimate and otherwise. Carlo sat at the far end, his expression carefully neutral. Beside him was a younger man I knew as Marco, who managed several of the restaurant properties. Vincent and Anton stood against the wall, their presence both security and statement. Elisio guided me to a seat at his right hand, a position whose significance wouldn't be lost on anyone present. Gentlemen, he began without preamble, thank you for coming. I've called this meeting to clarify our organization's direction and address some apparent concerns. For the next 20 minutes, he outlined the transition plan in clear, unemotional terms, the 5-year strategy, the financial projections, the legal frameworks being established. No one interrupted, though I noted several exchanged glances and Carlo's increasingly tight expression. This is not a suggestion or a proposal, Elisio concluded. This is the future of our organization. Those who wish to be part of it will be generously rewarded. Those who don't. He let the sentence hang, implication clear. And her? Carlo finally spoke, jerking his chin toward me. What role does she play in this new vision? Elisio's hand found mine on the table, a public declaration. Sophia is my partner in business and in life. Her financial expertise is already transforming our legitimate operations, and her perspective has been valuable in developing this transition. So we're to take orders from your girlfriend now? One of the older men asked, voice thick with disdain. You're to recognize her authority as you would mine, Elisio replied, his tone deceptively mild. And you're to understand that disrespect toward her is disrespect toward me. A tense silence followed. I could feel the assessment in their stares, the calculations happening behind expressionless faces. "May I speak?" I asked Alessio quietly. He nodded, surprise briefly crossing his features before he regained his composure. I turned to face the table of men, summoning every ounce of confidence I possessed. "I understand your reservations. I'm an outsider who appeared suddenly in Mr. Castelli's life, and now changes are happening that affect your livelihoods, your futures. That would concern anyone." Several shifted uncomfortably, not expecting direct acknowledgement of their fears. "But I'm not the cause of these changes. I'm merely a catalyst for what was already inevitable." I gestured to the financial projections displayed on the screen at the end of the room. The traditional aspects of this organization face increasing pressure from law enforcement technology, banking regulations, and shifting market dynamics. The legitimate businesses already generate 68% of total revenue, with only 35% of the risk. A murmur ran through the room. Clearly, not all of them had been privy to these specifics before. "This transition isn't about me," I continued. "It's about survival and growth. Those who adapt will prosper more than they ever have under the old model. Mr. Castelli is offering you a bridge to a more secure future. I suggest you consider crossing it." As I finished, the tension in the room shifted subtly. I couldn't claim to have won them all over, but I'd given them a perspective that was harder to dismiss as mere sentiment or weakness. Carlo was the first to break the silence. "Pretty words from an accountant, but some aspects of our business can't be legitimized. What happens to those operations? Those people phase out with support," Alessio answered. "No one who's been loyal gets abandoned. Those who can transition to legitimate roles will. Those who can't will receive retirement packages based on years of service. The specific plans are in the folders before you." The meeting continued for another hour, questions becoming increasingly practical rather than oppositional. By the end, I sensed a reluctant acceptance from most. If not enthusiasm, at least recognition of the inevitable. As the men filed out, Alessio standing at the door to exchange words with each, I remained seated, processing what had just occurred. I'd officially stepped into a role I'd never imagined for myself. Partner to one of the city's most powerful men, instrumental in transforming a criminal empire into a legitimate business conglomerate. "That went better than expected," Alessio said when we were finally alone. "Thanks to you," I replied. "Your speech was perfect," acknowledged their concerns while redirecting to the business case. "You have a natural talent for this. For numbers, maybe." I smiled wryly. "The rest I'm still figuring out." He pulled me to my feet, wrapping his arms around me. "You were magnificent. Even Carlo was listening by the end. He'll still be a problem, perhaps, but a manageable one now." He kissed me softly. "Thank you for standing with me tonight. Always," I promised, meaning it with a certainty that should have frightened me, but instead felt right, inevitable. In the weeks that followed, the transition gained momentum. 3 of the older captains took the retirement packages. Others began training for legitimate roles, and even Carlo grudgingly engaged with the process, offering insights on how to convert certain operations while minimizing disruption. Emma continued to thrive, making friends at school, developing a passionate interest in horses that Alessio indulged with riding lessons, and an ever-expanding collection of model horses. Her nightmares about bad men climbing walls faded, replaced by excitement about the upcoming Christmas visit from her cousins in Italy. One crisp autumn morning, exactly 1 year from the night I'd accidentally texted the wrong number, Alessio took me to the koi pond where Emma had first fed the fish. The gardens were ablaze with fall colors, and a light mist rose from the water's surface. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. The ring he produced was stunning but understated. A single flawless diamond flanked by smaller sapphires that matched his eyes. "I'm not asking yet," he clarified, seeing my expression. "That comes when the transition is further along, when I can offer you a cleaner future." "Then what is this?" I asked, touched by his consideration. "A promise." He slipped it onto my right hand, "that I'm committed to the path we discussed. To building something legitimate, something Emma can be proud of, something worthy of you both." I looked down at the ring glittering in the morning light. "It's beautiful. It was my mother's," he said quietly. "The only piece of jewelry my father ever gave her that wasn't questionable in origin. He saved for months to buy it properly. The sentiment behind the gesture moved me deeply. Thank you. From the main house, we heard Emma's voice calling for us. She ran down the garden path, her dark curls bouncing, Mr. Flopsy clutched in one hand. "Rosa says breakfast is ready," she announced, throwing herself against Elisio's legs. He lifted her effortlessly, her small arms wrapping around his neck with complete trust. Over Emma's head, his eyes met mine. Blue, intense, filled with a future neither of us could have imagined that rainy night when a mistaken text had brought him to my door. Life with Elisio Castelli would never be simple. The path ahead held complications, dangers, difficult choices. The transition would take years. With obstacles and resistance at every turn, there would be threats from rivals, challenges from authorities, hard decisions about loyalty and justice and power. But watching him with my daughter, feeling the weight of his mother's ring on my finger, I knew we'd made the right decision. Together, we were building something new from the complicated materials of our lives, something that honored the past, while creating a future Emma could inherit without shame. One mistaken text had changed everything. Had brought black cars surrounding my building, a dangerous man to my door. But in that danger, I'd found not just security, but something I'd stopped believing in. A partnership built on mutual respect, understanding, and yes, love. Some mistakes, it seemed, were fate disguised as errors, and this particular wrong number had led me exactly where I needed to be. "Come on," I said, taking Emma's hand as Elisio set her down. "Let's go have breakfast." As we walked back to the house together, Emma between us swinging our hands, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From a desperate text sent on a rainy night to this moment of hard-won happiness. The path hadn't been easy, and the road ahead would have its own challenges. But for the first time in years, I was walking toward the future with hope instead of fear, with a partner instead of alone. And in the end, that made all the difference.